Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Theology of Business podcast. I'm your host, Darren Shear, and this is a show for marketplace Christians seeking to explore and apply God's will for business. On this episode, we're joined by Rylee Meek. Rylee has built 8 companies, launching them to 7 and 8 figures within the first year of each, generating 9 figures over the past decade. Not that that's impressive or anything. It's pretty awesome. Utilizing his proven methods and strategies to build lasting relationships and lifetime customers, he's helped thousands of entrepreneurs gain clarity and create massive acceleration in their businesses and brands. And through the King's Council, his mission is to disciple Christian entrepreneurs, equipping them with the tools, systems, and frameworks necessary to discover, develop, and deploy their God-given visions into the marketplace in an effort to increase the tithe and initiate radical generosity for the purpose of kingdom advancement here on earth. I think you put some thought and prayer and time into that vision statement, Rylee.
Yes, that's been adjusted many times, but I really believe we've got this thing down of what we truly do within
Yes.
So.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, excited to have you on the show. Just to help our audience get to know you, what did you first realize God wanted to be involved in your work in the marketplace?
Man, well, I kind of joke around that I actually gave my life to entrepreneurship at the age of 15, and then my life to Christ at the age of 16. And so I think it was really, though, probably not until about 4 years ago, Darren, when I really understood what I was doing, or started to get clarity of why in the world am I doing what I'm doing, right? Because I realized, like, you can be incredibly successful at a lot of things and still feel like a failure if you're not operating for the God-given intended purpose of why you were created. And that's where I was at, man. For example, I have a very successful treadmill at home, in my home gym, a very successful treadmill at hanging my clothes. It's extremely successful at that, but it's not operating for the intended purpose of why the manufacturer made it. And I believe we as human beings are in the same boat, especially in the entrepreneurship world, because most of us are like, we love to build things. We're creative, and we've man, if any of your listeners are like me, I got shiny object syndrome like no other, because it's like, oh, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And it came back to, like, the question is no longer, can I do it? It's more a matter of, should we do it? And it wasn't really until I came into alignment with God's will for my life, versus me praying His will come into alignment with my will, right? And it was really understanding the difference between looking to Jesus as Savior versus Jesus as Lord. And it was only about 4 years ago, man, when that God grabbed a hold of me after a long prodigal son trip that I went on. He got a hold of me, and it's just been incredible ever since. So, yeah.
When you started to apply that revelation to business, how did things start to look differently? Is there maybe a story you could tell that would highlight that difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I think where it was rooted in is just a season of just complete unfulfillment in my life. You'd mentioned we've done pretty well financially, but it was coming down to, like, is this what life is all about? Like, I'm just supposed to build businesses and make money? And I heard this a lot, like, oh, it must be nice. And it little did anybody know that I was like a complete train wreck inside. Like, I was constantly trying to find fulfillment in what I could do. And it wasn't until God got a hold of me and it's like, listen, buddy, you can continue to run this race at your pace, or you can come back into the kingdom, right? And operate as Him ruling and reigning in my life. And once I had that understanding of what lordship actually was, then it was like, all right, I definitely know I've been given a gifting and ability, and I believe all of us has. We all have some sort of gifting, talent, and ability. We have seeds of greatness inside of us. But the number one determinant of if that seed ever takes root is what we surround that seed with. And this was where I found myself. I was surrounding myself with things of this world. I was surrounding myself with, in which I was being more influenced versus actually being influential. And that, I think, was the big understanding of like, okay, I needed to no longer be in business masterminds that the world was providing, but I wanted to find like kingdom. Were there other business owners that could I actually love God? Can I be sold out for Jesus and still crush business? Like, can I, and do I have the ability to actually make money? Because I thought money was like evil, right? Like, this is the mindset that I think flows throughout the church, especially parts of here in America, at least how I grew up. Like, I thought most Christians were broken, and defeated, and you had to be that way. Otherwise, you weren't a noble Christian, right? You were seeking. You must have been greedy or something along those lines. And it took a minute for me to really. It took time for God to reveal that to me. And the crazy thing, Darren, is that it was through the parable of the Good Samaritan, which I'd read many times. Most of us, even if you're not a Christian, you probably know about this parable, right? The Samaritan that's coming through town, and first off, there's somebody that gets robbed, they get beaten, they're broken and defeated, right? They're on the side of the road, and a priest comes by, doesn't want to be interrupted, passes on the other side of the street. A Levite comes by, passes on the other side of the street. Like, very religious minded people that didn't want to be burdened with somebody that was in need. And the Samaritan comes in, and this is my mind. I'm like, this guy's on a business trip, right? He's strolling to town. He's got his donkey. He's got all of his tools. He's got oil, right? Because it says that he sees the Samaritan. He's like, oh, snap, I got to go take care of this guy. So he bandages him up, puts oil on his head, puts him on his donkey, takes him to the inn, pays for him to stay at the inn. And then he says, hey, I got to move on, right? Because he's got to get to his business meeting. And he said, when I come back, though, even if there's debt due, I'll take care of it. Don't worry. Put it on my account. Jesus then asks, like, hey, which one showed mercy? And obviously they're like, well, the Samaritan. And this is what unlocked me, Darren, because this is what I struggled with. Like, can I make money and be a Christian? Like, is that possible? To be a holy Christian, right? Like what I grew up with. And Jesus' statement right after this is, as I mentioned, just completely unlocked me. He says, go and do likewise. This is like a command from Jesus. And when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, it is incredibly expensive to be that type of Christian. Yeah. If I'm supposed to be the one that can pay for somebody, put them on the inn, also I got to be available. I got to make myself available to God, and I have to have provision. I got to be ready to come to the plate when He calls me to bat. Right? Like, am I ready to do that? And I think the only way that can actually happen is through the business world, through entrepreneurship, where we have flexibility, right? But we're guided by the kingdom, His rule and reign, ultimately in our life, and then also having provision. The number one enemy of every vision out there is the lack of provision. And if we, as our business entrepreneurs, if we kingdom entrepreneurs, we'll say that, if we get this thing right, and we know that, hey, we've been given this ability, this gifting to create wealth. It's God that gives us that ability. And if we, in full submission to Him, know that we have that gifting, talent, and capabilities, by all means, we should be crushing business. We should be making as much as we freaking can so that we can actually be the type of Christian that Jesus called us to be. Because at the end of the day, I've been a part of a lot of churches where it's like, we'll pray for you, we'll pray for you, we'll pray for you. And then I've also seen it where it's like, well, I don't need to pray about this anymore. They just need to be bandaged up. They need to be in the end. There needs to be provision for this to actually take place. And that's where my heart with the King's Council, and ultimately what the vision, mission, vision, and purpose of what we're doing is to be the provision in the marketplace. Obviously, spreading the gospel, being the good news, but ultimately discipling entrepreneurs to do likewise, to go and do likewise.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a powerful message from the Good Samaritan for business people. And, like so many of Jesus's parables, it's a resource manager, oftentimes a business person who's the main character. in those parables, because God recognizes virtually all of us are assigned to for-profit context, and that's where we're to either fulfill or unfulfill what He's called us to do. Thank you for sharing that. So you've built a lot of different kinds of businesses, insurance agency. Tell us just some of the other types of businesses.
Yeah. So all sorts of different industries or verticals, we'll call it. But I think if I was going to boil it down to like what we really focus on is new client acquisition, right? Because in business, I remember the movie, what if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. Field
of Dreams, right? When I started in business, I was like, okay, if I build it, they will come. And then I realized like, that's a bunch of malarkey. If you build it, ain't nobody coming unless you have marketing and a lead system that's producing sales in your business, right? And so that's why I've just focused on new client or customer acquisition, and then looked for opportunities in the marketplace of what else could I sell through this format? Like morally and ethically had to be good, had to be providing value. Because one of the things that you hear a lot of, Darren, is like, or at least I did, was, hey, if you follow your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. And I realized that, again, it was kind of a bunch of bad advice because I know a lot of passionate people that are broke. For example, my wife loves to hold babies at church on Sunday morning. Like she volunteers to do that. Nobody's paying her money to do that, right? So what I learned is to follow opportunities, but always bring my passion with me. And if we have that mindset of like, okay, I'm going to bring my passion to the table here, and we're going to figure out how to build business, how to grow businesses, because at the end of the day, if you don't have leads and customers, I would argue you have a very expensive hobby. That's not a business unless you have a system of providing those in. And so, as you mentioned, man, it's been insurance agency. We have in the construction side of things, in the healthcare space, companies as well. But every single one of those, our sole focus was not that I'm passionate about any of those things. We've certainly had to vet it out. Like, are we providing excellent service, excellent products in the marketplace? Because this is where I think a lot of Christians fail, or they don't have the conviction of actually being excellent. And as Colossians tells us, to everything we do, we are to work as if we're working for the Lord, not for anybody else, right? And it's just like, if I'm doing that, like I'm going to be working my tail off to provide, not in a works manner. Like we know that we're not saved by works, but Scripture tells us we are saved to do good works, right? Which is like, okay, now I'm going to take this thing seriously and be responsible with what I've been given. And then knowing that if I do that, I know that God's not going to do our part. We certainly can't do His part, but I got to do my part, and I know He will do the rest. And in the business world, that's where we've really focused on new client acquisition and everything that we do, and then partnering with the right other leaders that can fulfill with the products and services that we have.
Yeah. So you talked about the importance of good marketing. What's one aspect of cultivating a Christ-centered company culture that you've implemented in these companies that generally doesn't get enough attention from Christian business leaders, you find?
Yeah, that's great. I think there's two ways to look at this from you said Christ-centered culture. I think there's two customers. As a business owner, I feel like there's two customers that I'm serving. There's the customers that I'm trying to get that are going to exchange, dollars for the value that we provide. But then also my employees are just as much as my customers as anybody else. And that comes back to the culture that we have to create. And ultimately, I think culture is only going to be as good as the vision that's laid out, right? And so, and I find this from the 7 days of creation that God lays out in Genesis. He actually has an actual structure and order. It's fascinating what the Bible provides us with templates and just it truly is our operating manual, especially in the business world. Problem is most of us just aren't really looking to it. But if we come back to it, we can create that culture where people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, right? This is why there's even other religions out there that people, we have something innate within us where we want to worship something, right? Pride and ego obviously come into play though, in which we want to be worshiped, right? And that's where creating that culture where it's like, hey, we are going to be servants first. We have to be intentional because everything within the kingdom economy, this is almost inverse to what the culture tells us, what the world tells us, right? The scripture tells us if you want to be first, you got to be last, right? Scripture tells us that if you want to receive, you got to give, right? It's like, how does this actually work? Because most people in the business world are operating with worldly concepts, and that's the culture that they're bringing in. But when you can create kingdom culture within your organization, that will absolutely flow out into the rest of the marketplace to draw those new clients and customers to you. And so it starts internally, man. But that is based upon the vision that you've laid out for your employees. Are they excited? Are the culture that you're creating, are they excited to come to business, come to work? Or are they like, that's another Monday?
What's an actual habit that you've implemented to cultivate a Christ-centered culture in your companies?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is identifying, number one, unashamedly be what you're about, right? Everybody that doesn't take long to know that I'm about Jesus. And so I'm unashamed about that. And even if hiring non-believers, they know what we're about before that's going to take place. And I'm never backing down from that. But I think the understanding at the end of the day, each person is a person, as an individual, depending on how many, employees that people have, it can get chaotic really, really quick, where you lose the sense of that family-like culture, right? And I want everybody to know people want to be seen and heard. And even if my relationship with my wife, all she really wants is to be seen and heard, and me being present with her and taking that time to do that. So I think it's important if you have multiple employees, from the top down, it's going to start with you being able to pour into your managers, ultimately, so they can be the managers and mentors that need to. It's a trickle down effect, right? But it absolutely starts with you, with the vision that you cast to create the culture to ultimately have the structure in place for your organization to actually thrive.
Well said. One of the things I've heard you talk about is this statistic about dollars being spent within different faith communities, and kind of comparing the sort of internal consumption of money among Christians versus Jews versus Muslims. What are those statistics, and what do you make of that?
Oh my goodness, man. This is like at the core of what we do in the business world. I believe that it starts and ends with us as business owners, as entrepreneurs, to usher in the change that I believe needs to take in order to create the kingdom economy, right? And just a quick, like, what is this kingdom economy? Well, first off, kingdom, we can break that down. We know Jesus is king, okay? And the DOM, the suffix of that is considered like a state or a being, right? So people are experiencing boredom or freedom or stardom, right? It's more of a verb tense. So kingdom, when Jesus returned, it was like the kingdom of heaven is here. That's what he was preaching. And from an economy standpoint, we look at how a nation actually is rated from an economic standpoint is based upon their GDP, the gross domestic productivity. Keyword productivity in that. And I think as we're being productive in the marketplace, that's going to be, we're creating this kingdom economy. Now, what we do, how we're productive with that, it's not that hard. The Bible tells us really how to do so. But I think the biggest thing that we've discovered is that there is almost zero loyalty amongst fellow believers. And what I mean by that is within the Christian faith, we'll say that there's tremendous loyalty outside of the Christian faith. As you mentioned, so those of the Islamic faith in the Muslim community, $1, okay, if I'm a consumer and I have $1, I'm going to go buy something. Those with the Muslim in the Muslim community will actually choose to do business with somebody of their same faith 14 to 16 times before that $1 will ever leave that community, right? So it's 14 to 16 times with with the Islamic faith. Jewish community, it's 10 to 13 times, right? This is why, I mean, we even just kind of maybe it's like a stigma or something where it's like people that are Jewish are like, they're wealthy, they have money generationally. It's because they're loyal. They're going to choose to do business with each other. In the Christian community, Darren, is 0 to 1, 0 to 1. And this is where all this really takes is a little bit of intention. But here's where I think we've gotten this wrong. The enemy's done an incredible job at infiltrating the minds of believers. This is what he's done since the beginning of time with just instilling a little bit of doubt, right? Like, did God really say in the garden? Did God really say? The enemy cannot block our blessing. Let's be crystal clear, but he can block our mindsets that causes us to do all the damage to ourselves, right? And so what I think has happened is that we think good stewardship as being a Christian is to shop at the cheapest, crappiest store possible. And that's, we're being good stewards, because Dave Ramsey said, I gotta operate on this budget and I'm being a good steward. Meanwhile, what you're truly doing is you're serving mammon in that, right? Because the Bible tells us that you cannot serve both God and money, or the more correct translation would be mammon. And that's the spirit of money, the power that we give it. And how the only way that I've really determined this, Darren, is of like, how do I know? Because this is a big thing for me 4 years ago. And I'm like, I'm crushing business, but am I serving God, or am I doing this just to serve money? And a lot of people think that it's serving money just means that you're trying to go get more and you're an entrepreneur, right? Like, you're serving money. Oh, all you're worried about is money, or all you talk about is money. Like, no, I think most Christians are serving money in their poverty. And the reason for that is the statistics actually show this. Like, they're choosing to buy something, or even to not buy something based upon mammon, based upon what they see with their lack, their limited eyes, thinking that the enemy's tricked us into that stewardship versus, for example, like if I need to get a book published, why in the world would I go to anybody outside of the faith? Why wouldn't I come right to you, Darren, and say, hey, I need to publish a book because I want to sow into you. It could even be cheaper somewhere else. I have no clue what you charge, but it could even be cheaper somewhere else. But I'm going to be intentional, because the Bible tells us to sow on good soil, right? Like, if I'm going to be intentional, I can sow into your business, and hopefully you're a tither, right? And that's going into now 10% is just out of honor and reverence for the fear of God. Like, we're giving back to him what is already his, but that's also going to kingdom advancement, right? That goes to the church, to operations, to allow them to do what they need to do. And they're hopefully tithing, right? And then you're also going to buy services from somebody else. Like, you should do it with another believer, in keeping this kingdom economy, keeping the dollar within the Christian community, so that we can actually take territory. We can actually advance the kingdom, being provision for the vision, and ultimately serve God, so that money then can serve us, right? That's where we get this thing wrong, is understanding the only way I've dictated like, how do I know if I'm serving God or if I'm serving mammon, is asking myself the question, who is dictating the decision? Is it because of mammon, of lack, or is it because God has told me to do this? I'm in alignment with him, right? And this happens, I think, we just did at our church, Kingdom Builders, like, they're raising money, and it's like, how many people I think are like, God tells them to $10,000, and they're like, I don't even have that in my bank account, God, like, I can't do that, right? So we immediately are like, that wasn't God, right? So we're serving mammon versus actually taking that step of faith and operating in the biblical manner of serving God, so then money can actually serve us. Because last I read, dude, I think you got the same Bible as me, but we serve a God that owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. And he is a God of prosperity. He is a God of abundance. The problem is everything that he has created, Satan has counterfeited and tweaked it and put doubt within our minds of how to actually operate with kingdom biblical authority on this earth. And it starts, as I mentioned, within the business community, within the entrepreneurship space, and it will trickle down into the marketplace if we get this thing right.
In 2021, more than $30 billion worth of ransoms were unnecessarily paid out by small businesses. These businesses didn't adequately protect their critical data against ransomware, allowing PCs, servers, and account software such as QuickBooks to be vulnerable. Secure your business today with StorageGuardian.com. To get an exclusive offer for Theology of Business podcast listeners, head over to StorageGuardian.com to get started for free for 60 days with their Veeam self-provisioning portal. Storage Guardian will also provide expert recommendations on how to protect your company from these types of attacks. Don't be a victim to attackers. Head over to StorageGuardian.com today. Wow, that is so good. And it made me think of the way Paul, and this is going to sound extreme, as many things in the scripture are, when Paul is talking to the admonishing Christians to not go bring their court cases before the secular courts. And he says the reason is because the judges are of no account to the church. So if we, and granted, there are more Christian, this was the very beginning of Christianity, right? So there were these judges were, I'm sure, in their paganism, just all kinds of wickedness going on. Not that our judges today are perfect, but we do have more Christian judges in this country, thankfully. But if we applied that same logic to other career fields and other businesses and service providers who we would be seeking their services and their products, like who are we going to do business with?
Yeah.
Like if you were to say, don't go, what if Paul said, don't go to a doctor that is of no account to the church. Don't go to a restaurant whose owner is of no account to the church. Like it's really the same operating principle. I think he singles out judges because obviously judges are deciding on what the culture is. I mean, they're deciding on how the culture is to be defined. But that would be a radical way to live. But as you mentioned, I mean, Jewish people are doing it. Muslims are doing it. Why aren't Christians doing it?
It just takes a little bit of intention. I mean, you can see I live in Minneapolis and I just see segments of our, the metropolis there where those of the Islamic faith are coming in, and within 3 years, man, they've completely taken over. They've completely taken over. The culture was changed. And this is where, what used to be a Christian culture, Christian community, now there's mosques in buildings where a church used to be. It's sad. It's disheartening. It's sickening. And as much as people hate to say it, it's like they have influence. And when they can come in and the almighty dollar, right? We'll call it that they're exchanging hands with each other. But back to where I think we've just gotten it wrong in our Christian faith, it's like they're looking at it as the almighty dollar, not the almighty God that gets to dictate and control my dollar of where to purchase. And it's hard to find, it's hard to just think like off the top of my head, like, okay, who's a Christian company out there? Most of us are like Chick-fil-A. We hear a lot about Hobby Lobby. What are these other ones? Like it's hard for us, especially that's like macro. If we come down in my community, who's another fellow believer? And that's partly what we're doing is we're creating that kingdom directory for people to actually know, like not only nationwide, but in my community, in my church, who's another business owner? Like if I needed my house painted, why wouldn't I find somebody within our local church that paints houses? right? Now, they better be doing it well, because if not, then that's another accountability factor of like, all right, well, you're supposed to operate in excellence, bro. So where are we at here? And I think it's twofold in that of like continually operating in excellence, putting out the best product, the best service possible, but also then keeping the dollar within that kingdom community. That will give us influence. And it starts locally, and then it can go regionally and ultimately globally.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see this play out not only in the way that money is handled and money is spent, but the way disciples are made or not made. Like with young people, I don't know about your first job. My first job was working in a restaurant. And so I don't know if you know about Bojangles, but down here in the South, I was working back in the kitchen and making that fried chicken and biscuits.
Nice.
I'll tell you what, that is one dirty job. But I was around some. I mean, this is not anything negative about Bojangles as a company, but it's just the nature of the restaurant industry. You're around a lot of people that are, they're not exactly on the best trajectory in life, and generally not on a godly trajectory. And this is how I was being discipled. But you look at in the Jewish culture, a young boy is going to get his first job is going to be working in his father's shop, right?
Yep.
And I haven't studied this among Muslims. I assume it's probably a similar principle in play. But there's just, it's like, well, I can't afford to pay my kid to come work in the company, or I'm not a business owner, which is another matter.
Yeah.
Probably starting out, a lot of us need to be focused more on starting our own businesses than just kind of going after the W-2 by default, and then teaching and that's how kids are taught that, well, you just need to go where you can get a job. And hey, who's hiring? Drive up and down, the main drag through your town and look at the billboards. And well, McDonald's says they're paying, 13 an hour, and Burger King says they're paying 14 an hour. I don't know what they pay, but so that's where you need to go. But we don't think strategically enough, do we, Rylee?
Yeah, oh, man, I love even talking about this, because I think when I read the Bible, again, if I'm going to look at this thing as our operating manual, I don't see anything in the Bible referencing an employee, right? Here's what I see in the Bible. I see master, I see slaves, I see servants, and then there are laborers, right? Like Paul was a tent maker as well. Can you imagine Paul? This is just kind of funny to think about, like, that. I bet the dude crushed at selling tents. Like, we don't know, but
he was so driven. He had to be.
Yeah. As passionate. He's got to be like, man, I've got the triple stitch tent, who knows back then, but I bet he was really freaking influential in the tent making space. Right. And I think here's what culture has done again. It wasn't really, I mean, in 1913, this is the stats. In 1913, 3% of people, we're talking here in America, were considered employees. 97% were independent contractors or like entrepreneurs, right? And that was at, 110 years ago now. That number today is completely inverse. Completely inverse. It's most people have become employees and are not seeking like starting their own thing. And this has happened strategically from the Industrial Revolution, which they knew that they needed employees. They wanted a hard worker that will put in, what's the most that I have to pay them, or the least that I have to pay them. What can I pay them? Where they're going to come in, they're going to do a specific task for a specific period of time. And it was actually even at that point in time too, in 1913, the school system was essentially, hey, you would come to school until about the 7th grade, and then you start a business, or you take over, as you mentioned, like your dad's blacksmithing business, or you made tents or whatever it was. But the school system has largely indoctrinated us to create employees, right? Whether we like it or not, we can sit back and just look at culture, how they have created this mindset that you think you go to school, you show up at a specific time, you get a bathroom break or maybe a recess break, you get a lunch break, the bell rings, you sit back down. This looks pretty much like an employee, right? And now even the school system, college these days, it's like they literally, you go hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to then hopefully get a job that is like a third of what your debt you've accumulated on an annual basis. You've literally created a master-slave relationship versus just providing value to the marketplace. Now, obviously, schooling is great if you're going for a specific thing, like an attorney or a doctor of some sort. But if you're going to go get a philosophical degree in butterfly weaving. I don't even know if that's a thing, but come on, what are you doing here? And I think this is just what culture has accepted versus creating or providing an ability for kids to think creatively, like thinking outside of the box and not just memorization, but actually giving them a problem and making them solve it. And actually figuring out how things work and even auditing our thoughts of why do we think the way that we think? And that's, I think, where entrepreneurs thrive, right? Or business owners thrive as they create value. And then now it's wonderful to have employees. I have employees, but every single one of my employees, the culture that we've created is that they have an entrepreneur mindset, right? Meaning the root word of entrepreneur, the French word of it, entreprendre, pardon my French, Darren, but it literally means to undertake. That's it. So whether you're an employee getting an hourly rate or you're on salary or something like that, everybody that works within our organizations, they're there to undertake. And they know that they are so bought into the mission and the vision of what we're doing that they're happy to come. And that's the culture that we've created. And I think more business owners in Kingdom business owners need to do this wisely in order to have that actual impact, again, creating that culture. But it's very interesting to think about, even at the last 150 years, how things have changed so dramatically with what we accept in the business world.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, I wanted to hear a little bit more about the 7-day blueprint. Can you, you don't have to go through the whole thing, but just give us a couple of snapshots of what that's about.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it quick. So I think I've referenced this, Genesis chapter 1. Again, I'm looking at the Bible as how do I run my life, and then how do I run my businesses, and if this is truth, can I walk this thing out? And there's so many principles within the Bible, starting in Genesis. As a business owner, as a creator, why in the world wouldn't I follow the original creator's blueprint, right? And he's laid it out on how he created for 6 days and then rested, the Sabbath, which he created for man, for us, the need for that. But real quick, day one, God said, let there be light. Most people, when they hear light, they think of the sun. The sun wasn't even created until day 4 when you actually look through this. And so what in the world was God saying when he said, let there be light? Because scripture also tells us that God is light. And so what he was doing when he spoke, first off, he spoke everything into existence, which I think is a model that that we should follow. The power of our words is so influential. And so are we speaking life or are we speaking death? God spoke life. Let there be light. He cast vision. He cast his energy for ultimately what he was going to continue to create. And this is where I think, as every entrepreneur, if your vision is not strong enough, or your vision has to be strong enough to give any sort of pain purpose in your business, in your life, right? And because even understanding this, that God actually, being Alpha and Omega, he knew we were going to fall. If he is omniscient, he knows all things, everything that's going to happen. He knew we were going to jack this thing up in the very next chapter. Why did he still do it? His vision gave that pain purpose. He had it so clear. He knew what he was ultimately creating. Day 2, it said he separated the heavens from the earth. And essentially he created the atmosphere, right? And in the business world, I consider this culture. So we have vision, we have culture. Day 3, he peeled back the waters to create dry land and vegetation. This would be how we actually even can breathe on this earth today, right? Carbon dioxide into oxygen, the photosynthesis, all of this actually there's an incredible order that God put this into place, which it is actually day 4, what I would consider order. It said this is where he put the sun and the moon, placed the stars in the sky, and he created time, what we would consider how we monitor a 24-hour time period, which is essentially the implementation of structure, right? So the structure that we have is like the playbook in our business, right? And I don't even think like a business plan, because business plans are irrelevant to most employees. Like they don't, unless you're trying to raise capital or something, you need a daily, what are your SOPs? What's the playbook that I have to run? And the order would be actually implementing that playbook. And once we do that, we get to day 5, which is I consider momentum, because this is where God said he created the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. And this is where it's like gets really exciting, because first off, he had to create the vision, the atmosphere, the structure, the order first, in order for animals to even live, right? We had to have air to breathe. We had to have vegetation to eat. Also, when the birds would defecate, we'll call it, not to get too gross in this, but that actually provide fertilizer for the plants in the coral reef that then the fish could eat, that then the birds could eat. And this is like the momentum. So in business, this is your different divisions, your marketing, your sales, HR, everything in place here has to be cohesive in that we're able to actually gain momentum. Because if marketing's not working, sales are down, right? If sales are down, it's going to affect HR and everybody else because money's not coming in. So one thing is not more important than the other. It's having that momentum to ultimately day 6 then multiply. So he created the rest of the animals, and then he gave us what I believe is our kingdom entrepreneur mandate is to be fruitful, to subdue this earth, right? To multiply, subdue this earth, actually have dominion. And this is before the fall. So this is like the kingdom culture mandate, more than just making babies, Darren, but that's a part of it. But it's more of this culture that we are to have dominion on this earth. And then ultimately day 7 is the Sabbath. So it's a framework that we coach on. This is how we teach and how we create if you're looking to create a relationship, start with this framework. What's the vision? What's the culture? Is there structure? Is there a playbook that we're operating? Is there an order? We're accountable. We're measuring. These are like our KPIs in the marketing world. We actually have that order to create momentum to ultimately scale our business, multiply, never though sacrificing the Sabbath, because that's what God actually created for man, not man for the Sabbath, knowing that we need to rest. And also it's just a way of honor. Like we're reflecting, we're worshiping God in everything that we do. And that is that 7-day blueprint.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love how just the whole 7 days of creation, it's a process.
Yes.
And I mean, for many of us, I think what gets us hindered from being able to advance in our entrepreneurial calling is we just get analysis paralysis, or we just get kind of seized up on maybe comparing ourselves to some other company that's been around for 10 years longer than we have. And well, if I'm not going to be able to jump right to that, then I'm just going to sit on my hands. But I mean, God literally, I mean, he started with everything. He is everything, but he created the world out of nothing, formless and void. So,
yes.
Wow, what a model. That's the framework of all frameworks, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So the book is the 7-day blueprint. And then joinkingscouncil.com is the website to learn more about the King's Council. Anything else you want to say in terms of a call to action?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we can get you that framework. I like to use this as like an X-ray of my business, where there's a snapshot of where am I at, because it's it exposes those areas where maybe we don't have momentum or order isn't happening, or we don't even have a playbook, the structure to actually run things. So it exposes those things. So again, joinkingscouncil.com. We'll direct you on how to get that information on there. Ton of free resources that we provide within our app that will actually help walk through these biblical frameworks on how to actually, again, do this thing of life, but with a kingdom perspective, and ultimately bring intention into everything that we're doing. Not only it starts with our business, but it's amazing how it trickles into every other aspect of our life as well.
Beautiful. Rylee, thanks for the important kingdom work you're doing, and thanks for imparting some of that wisdom to our listeners today, and to me in particular. We all need it.
Yeah, absolutely, Darren. It's been my pleasure, man. Appreciate you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. You can share your feedback and get more information to help you partner with God in business and disciple your company, your industry, and your community at theologyofbusiness.com. The Theology of Business podcast is sponsored by Highbridge Books and Media, a media agency specializing in publishing and promoting the world-changing ideas of inspiring thought leaders through book publishing, website development, publicity, email marketing, social media management, podcast management, and video-based course publishing. Take the next step to share your message with the world by contacting us at highbridgemedia.com. Thanks for listening, and keep partnering with God in your business.